Hello, hello. It's Dr. Pamela here, and I am so excited to see you all today as we are having our fourth installment of Breaking the Mental Health Stigma for Mental Health Awareness Month. And I am so excited to be joined by Dr. Shairi Turner, my good friend. We've known each other for what, at least 30 years
Yeah,
now?
at least.
Yeah. And I tell you, this series, when I thought about doing it, I had to include you
Oh,
because
thank
you
you.
have been such a champion of mental health and mental wellness. Even before, I knew you in your current role.
Yeah.
And so I am excited to have this conversation with you and just hear about, just your thoughts around mental health, the importance of mental health. And, one of the things that I find so striking is in your title is Chief Health Officer and not Chief Mental Health Officer, even though you're in a mental health company. And I just think that it speaks volumes to the importance of mental health, not only for just mental health, but our overall wellness. And so, with that, I just want to start a conversation with you. So,
Thank
how
you.
you doing today?
I am great.
Yes.
Thank you for
Okay.
inviting me to cap
Yeah.
off this series. It's so important. What Mental Health Awareness Month is an
Yeah.
opportunity for everybody to rally around mental health and
Yeah.
well-being, hopefully
Yeah.
then to carry it through the other
Hmm.
11 months. Yeah, so
Yeah.
the title Chief Health Officer at Crisis Text Line really speaks
Hmm.
to the fact that our overall health and
Yeah.
well-being is connected. The mind, the head is
Yes.
connected to the body. It's
Yeah.
all part of our health. And if our mental health suffers,
Yeah.
generally we're going to feel it in the rest of our bodies.
Yeah, that is so true. Now, I assume that, this meant the importance of mental health for you didn't start just with your role at Crisis Text Line. Even though we haven't really talked about it much over the years, I'd love to, hear more about just kind of maybe when it all started for you, the importance of mental health, even if you have a starting an origin story at all.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
it dials way back and it speaks to my belief that we always wind up where we should be.
Hmm.
Because when
Mm.
you and I were at Stanford, I was a
Yeah.
biology major, I was
Yeah.
hardcore pre-med, but had a
Uh-huh.
moment there where I felt like I would love to be a psychology major. There was something that drew
Yeah.
me and appealed to me,
Hmm.
but I
Yeah.
just felt like, all right, I'm on this path. When you're younger, you think there's no deviation, right? You're on
Right.
this path.
Uh-huh.
So I finished at Stanford. I went to Case Western for medical school.
Hmm.
Again, planning
Yeah.
shifting from wanting to be a
Yeah.
pediatrician to doing medicine pediatrics.
Mm.
But found at the end of my 4 years of medical school, you do a clerkship for each specialty so you can get a sense
Yeah.
of each one is about. My
Hmm.
last clerkship was in psychiatry, and it was at a
Hmm.
dual, I went and spent time
Hmm.
at a dual diagnosis unit for men who were veterans, and dual
Hmm.
diagnosis being those who have a
Yeah.
mental health and substance use disorder. Um,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
loved it, just loved the talk therapy, loved how people were sharing and growing and coming to
Mhm.
understand their own mental health and
Yeah.
how it played into their substance
Yeah.
use.
Wow.
From there, I went on to residency at Mass General and Boston Children's in medicine
Mhm.
and pediatrics. But once I finished, I realized one, the medical profession, this was the early 2000s, was not
Yeah.
going to allow me to spend the time to connect and talk to my patients in the way that I wanted to.
Right.
So
Right.
I did a minority health policy fellowship at the Harvard
Mhm.
School of Public Health. And
Mhm.
during that time, I worked with the Department of Youth Services, which was the
Yeah.
juvenile justice
Uh-huh.
agency in
Mhm.
Massachusetts. And, I remember the administrator there saying, if you could cure hopelessness for these young people,
Mm.
it would go far. And that was before anyone was talking about trauma or trauma informed practices.
Wow.
Fast forward to another fellowship, and
Mhm.
focusing on incarcerated populations.
Yeah.
I lost a very close family friend to suicide when he was incarcerated. And,
Mm.
um, and then ultimately went to work to be the first chief medical director for the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, helped to incorporate
Mhm.
trauma and trauma-informed practices into a very heavily and highly populated juvenile justice system. Um,
Right.
there to the Department of Health, and then ultimately to Crisis Text Line, where it really combines all the things. It
Yeah.
combines mental health,
Mm.
crisis intervention, public health, because we're doing it at a large scale across
Yeah.
the country, um,
Mhm.
internationally. So again, like, it was a journey, but the trauma piece took me back to the mental health that
Yeah.
appealed to me when I was at Stanford.
Wow. Wow. And as I'm listening to all of this, I'm thinking like, oh, I didn't know
Right,
that.
right.
Because I think that for so many of us, when we see MD, we just figure, oh, you're a physician. And yeah, I recognize just from the way we interacted that you probably had good bedside manners. And spend a lot of time in
Yeah,
hospitals and everything else. But hearing this side just opens it up in so many other ways that I just
yeah.
didn't even know. Oh, that is so
After all these
awesome
years.
after all of these years. And I think because for so many of us, when we are just having regular conversations, oftentimes I think, especially in our community, we don't talk about mental health or mental wellness, as often as we should. And I've also had experiences with others, someone else who had committed suicide. And, that's just still never a conversation we've had before after all
Right.
these years, even though we both shared that experience of losing someone close to
Yes.
suicide.
Yes.
And so I'm just, gosh, further impressed.
Oh, thank you.
That's what I could say. Now, what about in your work? I'd love to hear more about what you all are seeing as it relates to teens, especially because I would imagine that many of those who are texting to get support are oftentimes teenagers. And a lot of my, interests, in mental health has come about through my work with teenagers and seeing some of the challenges that they're having through the years. So I'd love to hear more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So just for a background for your audience, as the chief health officer, Crisis Text Line is a national nonprofit. So we provide free
Mhm.
24/7 mental health support and crisis intervention solely by text. So text,
Mhm.
WhatsApp, and web chat in English and in
Yeah.
Spanish. So anyone can text help to 741-741 and receive support live in the moment from a trained volunteer crisis counselor who's supervised by our mental health professional staff.
Mhm.
After each conversation is
Yeah.
de-escalated, the texter is offered the opportunity to complete a survey that's anonymous, confidential,
Mhm.
that gives us this aggregated information that allows me to answer your question,
Yeah.
which is
Mm.
over 70% of our
Mhm.
texters are under the age of 25. So we
Wow.
know, one, we know globally that we have a
Mhm.
mental health epidemic. We
Yeah.
know, two, from our work at Crisis Text Line, that texting is a modality that appeals to young people. They are
Yeah.
digital natives. They do
Mhm.
not want to hear a voice. They do not want to talk to someone. They want to be able to control the conversation
Yeah.
at their own pace, in their own time,
Mm.
and look like they are texting anybody in any moment. They can be having a
Yeah.
panic attack, but they're still texting, and no one has to know.
Right.
And what we found from these surveys is that
Mhm.
suicidal ideations are still a
Mhm.
very large concern. But the
Yeah.
top 5 issues in these
Mhm.
conversations are around relationships. So that can be with parents,
Mm.
with peers,
Yeah.
with teachers. Um,
Mhm.
1 in 3 conversations mention relationships.
Yeah.
Anxiety and stress, 1 in 3 conversations. People are feeling, as you can imagine,
Oh,
young
yeah.
people are feeling the stress of they're still, the
Mhm.
post-pandemic phase, the
Yeah.
implications there, all that's going on politically, racially around the country is impacting them. Depression and sadness. 1
Mm.
conversations are actually about suicide, and 1
Yeah.
in 6 are about isolation and loneliness. So our young
Wow.
people are really struggling, but
Mhm.
they are reaching out to Crisis Text Line in need, and we're there to support whatever their issue is. We say a crisis
Yeah.
to you is a crisis to us. So we don't gatekeep. It can be
Yeah.
anything from homework to imminent risk of suicide.
Wow. Wow. And as you share that data, it definitely confirms, a lot of what I've already been thinking and seeing. And I love what you shared in terms of, it's a place for them, the texters to communicate at their own pace and with privacy as well. And I think about that, as a parent, sometimes I know I talk to a lot of parents who see their kids texting and they're thinking that's all they're doing. They're always on their phone. And in a situation like this, that phone is like a lifeline,
It is.
for
It's
them.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword, right? For parents
Yeah.
who want to limit social media because we know social
Right.
media, writ large can have impacts on
Mhm.
mental health. Taking
Yeah.
away the phone could also be taking away, an unknown space of support that the child has
Right.
found.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have to tell you this, Dr. Turner. This is going to sound so crazy, but before I started doing this work, I used to work in tech. I don't know if you ever knew
I
that, but
remember.
I worked in tech and I used to work for Lucent Technologies before they were acquired and changed their name. They were a spinoff of the Bell companies. So, anyway, I was working with Lucent out in the Bay Area at the time. And part of my role in finance was to look at the different new products we were developing and make a decision on, just how to forecast and determine the profitability of these products that we were initiating at the time. And so, with this particular product that we had, I was just like, gosh, I just don't see how this is going to be a product that's going to be viable for anyone because you can just talk on the phone. Why would you need this product? And you see where I'm going
Yes,
with it.
yes, yes.
So yes, I could not predict where this product was going to go. So I just thought this is going to be a sure loser. Yes, and it was
Yes.
SMS.
Yes, yes, because it was so foreign to us, right?
So
We were
foreign.
we were telephone-based children. I remember my little princess phone that I had in high school. I was
Uh-huh.
so excited to have a phone of a landline in my bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was huge. How far we've come and how
Right.
multimodal, multi-service
Yes.
servicing what we are able to do with our phones
Yes.
now. I mean, even in the
Exactly.
past 10 years, like,
Yes.
the phone can virtually be and do everything for us or bring us to
Yeah.
that space. The
Yeah.
thing about Crisis Text Line is that we are always about,
Mhm.
even though we travel in people's phones, we are
Yeah.
about human to human connection. So we are
Yeah.
not a company that will ever use AI to respond
Mm.
to someone in
Right.
crisis, right? We use
Yeah.
AI to augment and improve the
Yeah.
workspace for our crisis supervisors and our texters
Mm,
get to texters sooner, but
yeah,
texters will always have that in person by text, but human to
yeah.
human connection.
Yeah, yeah, which is so important because I feel that, while, AI can help us be more productive in so many ways, that kind of connection deserves, that
Yeah,
human interface for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And back when we were at Stanford, I was working with a few tech companies there in the Valley, and I worked for an artificial intelligence publisher. We didn't call it AI back then.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so
Amazing.
it's just amazing to see just how far we've come, with technology and its advancements. And so, with that, and some of the work that you're doing at Crisis Text Line. I'm curious though, how do you use AI currently? You see you're using it with, is it more with professional development or how is it
So,
being used?
right. So we have machine learning algorithms so that we're
Hmm.
able to better understand how to prioritize uh,
Yeah.
texts that come in. So when someone
Hmm.
texts in, the first
Hmm.
question they get after the terms of service is, "What is your crisis?" And based
Hmm.
on their response there, AI and machine learning help us to prioritize someone who is at higher risk or imminent risk of
Right.
suicide. So
Right.
if someone says my crisis is homework, versus someone who says I just took Tylenol, right? We know that
Hmm.
Tylenol is potentially puts them at a higher risk for having attempted suicide or imminent risk of suicide. So that conversation gets moved up in the queue to help
Mm,
um,
right.
make sure that they get that texter gets addressed and
Mm,
connected to a volunteer more quickly. We use it in other ways around our
mm,
training. We
yeah.
have a shift simulator.
Mm,
Basically, all the ways to make for a faster, smoother
yeah.
environment,
Yeah.
both in the background in how we
Hmm.
process, but also in the foreground in so far as we develop our own platform and
Yeah.
we run our own platform so that
Mhm.
our supervisors who are managing
Mhm.
multiple conversations can
Yeah.
key in on the ones that need their attention
Mhm.
immediately, as
Yeah.
well as helping our volunteers.
Mhm.
So we continue to pour into the benefits of AI as a
Mhm.
and to augment
Right.
the human to human experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Now, the title of this is Breaking the Mental Health Stigma. And, I'm curious, in your work, and especially as you're talking with different communities, different employee groups, are you still seeing that stigma
Of
attached
course.
to mental
Yeah.
health?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it chipping away at
Uh-huh.
stigma versus breaking
Yeah.
because there's so
Mhm.
many there's different reasons where
Yeah.
stigma is something that would prevent someone from reaching out and
Mhm.
accessing mental health support. That could
Yeah.
be anything from personal experiences with mental health
Mhm.
professionals that may not have worked or the chemistry may
Yeah.
not have been right, or
Right.
it could be cultural, in the Black community and others, the
Mhm.
reaching out for support, it was
Yeah.
not always something that people
Mhm.
advocated for. There was
Right.
either see your pastor or we're not
Right.
going to let anyone know that you're having.
Yes.
There's a
Mhm.
silencing through shame, through embarrassment,
Yeah.
humiliation that
Mhm.
happens in multiple communities. And I think it's even hard to say
Mhm.
like to specify
Yeah.
what stigma means in different cultures, right? Because
Right.
everybody's history with mental health professionals, with
Mhm.
mental illness is different, and
Yeah.
you can't even stereotype across and
Sure.
shouldn't stereotype
Yeah.
individuals within a culture, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody might have a different reason for not accessing mental health services. So what we
Right.
really do is try to normalize the conversation, have
Mhm.
mental health awareness months where everybody sort of takes that month to mobilize in whatever way they can a
Mm.
conversation or
Yeah.
resources or data or awareness about mental health so people do not feel
Mhm.
alone, and that they feel like they can reach out at any time. And, I know people in
Mhm.
the 70s and 80s who are seeking
Yeah.
mental health support for the first time. And that's
Right.
huge. And it's like it's never too
Yeah.
late to
Yeah.
feel good, right? To
Right.
feel mentally well, to feel happy. And sometimes you
Mhm.
carry that weight and that darkness for so
Yeah.
long, you think that it's normal. But when people have conversations and say, I used to have that heaviness and darkness, and now I just feel so differently now that I've talked through it and dealt with my
Mhm.
trauma, then it can be an
Yeah.
aha moment in someone's
Yeah.
own personal struggle with stigma.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if we've talked about this, but certainly for me, as a teen, I couldn't access
Yeah.
it. And the one time that I did have an opportunity to speak with a therapist, I was sharing it with my mother afterwards. And afterwards, she was just like, listen, you're not going back there because if you go back, you will be crazy. And that
Yeah.
was the end of it.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until probably my third experience with depression that I
Mm,
actually sought help. And that was because my children
yeah.
suggested it, because the first couple of times I didn't even recognize it. It's just like, it was a gloominess, but, I just felt like, oh, I'll just get over it, and just didn't, take it seriously at all in the way that I should. And I know that part of it was that stigma from when I was younger that no, you just don't do this. You don't talk to anyone else. And so I am, grateful that we are in a place now where we are starting to, as you said, chip away at it.
Yeah.
Now, this question may not be the fairest question because it's a big question to ask you, but what do you think we need to do to really get to a point where it's something that's recognized the other 11 months and not just 1 month out of the year?
Right. Solve that.
Yes.
Right. Well, continuing to have, because we now have Mental Health
Mhm.
Awareness Month, we have
Yeah,
Suicide Prevention Month,
right.
we have specific months where we recognize
Yeah.
the Latin mental health in the Latino community, Minority
Mm,
Mental Health Month, Black
yeah,
men's mental health, so
yeah.
we actually are starting to span the year, right?
Mhm.
And target specific awareness for specific groups, recognizing
Yeah,
sort of those cultural or gender differences. So it's about
yeah,
continuing all of that. It's
yeah,
about continuing to fund the services,
yeah.
making sure that our pipeline, the workforce,
Mhm.
is adequate, which it's not.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
ensuring that mental health
Yeah,
professionals are paid, that there's the
right.
parity issue that exists
Mhm.
right now
Yeah,
between their ability to be paid,
yeah.
recognizing that Medicaid
Mhm.
is one of the largest providers of mental health services.
Really?
So cuts
Okay.
to Medicaid are going to be hugely impactful. Um,
Mm.
and then even for mental health professionals, it's so challenging to get
Mhm.
reimbursement, right? So many of them
Yeah.
choose just for their own sanity and
Mhm.
well-being and ability to make a living are
Yeah.
only fee for service. So you have to
Yeah.
pay out of pocket, and people
Yeah.
can't do that. So
Mhm.
it is a chipping away at all
Yeah.
the different levels. It's about prevention,
Yeah.
it's about awareness,
Mhm.
awareness through the different months,
Yeah.
awareness at the different levels, starting
Mhm.
with young children, supporting
Yeah.
parents in having their
Yeah.
conversations, teachers and recognizing. So it's
Mhm.
just really saying that mental health is health
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
everywhere at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. Any call to action for our audience,
Yes.
especially, as we're closing this month and some of the outreach that you're doing at Crisis Text Line? What would you want to share with our
Well,
audience?
always, everyone take a
Mhm.
moment and
Mhm.
save 741-741 in your
Yeah.
phone, because
Mhm.
in that moment when you're in need and in crisis, you're gonna
Yeah.
not necessarily remember crisis text line, but put it in
Yeah.
there, save it, that you can text
Hmm.
help, English or Spanish, or have it as a resource for others. If
Yeah.
you're a parent in a school system, share crisis text line. We have free
Mhm.
resources on
Yeah.
crisistextline.org. We're always running campaigns. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Find
Yeah.
us, find those downloadable resources,
Mhm.
so that you can
Yeah.
continue to spread the word and help others. On the
Yeah.
other hand, anyone
Mhm.
over the age of 18 can go
Mhm.
to our website, crisistextline.org, become a
Yeah.
volunteer, where
Mhm.
they take 10 to 15-hour online self-paced training to
Mhm.
learn how to support others on the platform. And amazingly, also, just
Mhm.
taking the training, our volunteers have told us it has helped their personal mental health and
I
well-being.
bet.
It
Yeah.
has helped them to de-escalate situations in their communities, at
Yeah.
schools. So taking the training does not only just benefit the texter from a volunteer perspective, but
Mhm.
it benefits the volunteer as
Right.
a person in a
Wow.
time where what do
Mm.
we now more than ever? Good
Yeah.
mental well-being, and
Mhm.
resilience, and our training can help individuals to attain that.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so very much,
Uh,
Dr. Turner. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in person sometime
yes,
soon.
yes, absolutely. Thank you for doing this. You are definitely, playing your role in elevating
Aw.
this important, and that's all we
So
can do, one by one.
Carrie Ann just posted a question.
Oh,
What's the age minimum for people who want to take the training?
oh, yes, thank you. 18. So anyone 18 and older can fill out an application. There's a background
Yeah.
screen and then training.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carrie Ann, sign up.
Please. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Great. Take care and
All
talk
right.
with you
Thank you,
later. Thank
Pamela.
you all for watching.
Bye-bye.